Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bar Talks December 14th edition. There are not as many PMO changes that I thought we'd have today to go over, which is kind of how we allocated our day. But we do have some great guests that are going to give us some updates on what we can expect going into the year 2021. But before we get to our guests, I wanted to reach out about a couple things. First, there's Executive Order 19 that was issued just on the 11th. That would have been Friday, that indicated essentially places that are open to the public are to take whatever precautions they think are necessary to keep us safe. So that means, limiting the people that come into their public area, or actually doing whatever type of protection requirements they think are just, and that they're going to be backed by the governor. And you can read essentially the very broad language that's in that executive order. Just a reminder too that the governor declared a civil state of emergency on November 24th. So that civil state of emergency will be coming to an end on the 24th of December unless the governor extends it. Just another thing of note too, the governor proclaimed December 10th, that was last Thursday, as Get Covered in Maine 2021 Day. So that goal being that she proclaimed that she's going to do whatever she can to help everyone get insurance coverage for health insurance coverage for 2021. So and you can read about that proclamation too on her webpage of the Office of Governor Janet Mills. And that leads us to the next thing, which is pretty exciting. If for those of you that haven't been on the new website, the Maine Judicial Branch put together a new website. And it does appear to be user-friendly, and it's definitely brighter colored and fun to look at. It did take me a little bit to figure out where the pandemic management orders were, but they are there and accessible from their drop-down menus bar going across the top or in the middle of their screen. And I was given words of advice from a message from Chief French that we should be paying close attention to the, go into this judicial branch website and checking on court closures. And I'm guessing that's because there's probably going to be a lot of activity. Well, as we can see, Angela got up for us on the slide what they've posted already, which is some closures for today and some going right through Friday, it looks like. So know that there's probably going to be more of those. I was just at the Biddeford District Court, and yes, and they posted it here. I was at the Biddeford District Court, and ADA Knight informed me that they weren't having any criminal defendants come into the court for the month of December. So, and there you go, it's alluding to it on this posting too. So the courts are doing everything they can to clamp down on the spread of the virus, and please keep looking at the website if you do have occasion to go into the court, because who knows whether or not it's going to be open. All right, with that, we have special guest Aria E., Executive Director of the Maine Board of Bar Overseers. And Aria, I saw your wave there. Aria was gracious enough to come on board at a fairly last minute request, asking for some updates, possibly on, and I'm putting her on the spot on this one too, possibly on what we can find out about how the new persons that pass the bar are going to be able to be ushered into, or pass the bar exam, I'm sorry, you're going to be able to be ushered into our Board of Overseers, as well as any trends that they're seeing related to complaints from users of legal services. Aria, if you're there, please, yes, pop on.
Oh, here I am. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So I'll come back to the complaints side of that. In fact, I'll have to think about that, because since I haven't been bar counsel for since really this summer, I've
Right.
been out of the complaint process, but I do see everything that comes through the office still. It's just nice to be only an educator and advisor to my colleagues and not have to worry about investigating anybody. This has always been my favorite part of the job. And on that note, to give y'all some reminders, one thing that we've noticed in the pandemic, and you've heard me talk about this before, is there's been a lot of lateral movement. And so if you have decided that the pandemic has taught you that you don't want to practice law anymore, but you'd rather teach, or you've opened up a bistro and brewery, you've got to update your contact with us so that if people are looking for you, then we can redirect them to your new location. And one thing that we learned through this registration cycle was that if lawyers left firms and opened up new firms, or went to government practice, their registration emails and registration paperwork went to the old place, and they were scrambling at the end, and some actually got administratively suspended because they failed to update their contact. So please do so. It's just a fillable form on our website. And speaking of registration, remember that right now you can finish earning your CLE credits, and the MSBA has plenty of programs. We've partnered with y'all on some of those programs, and we'll continue to do so for the Avoiding Harassment Discrimination series, which our next one is, I think it's either February 4 or 5. We're deciding which of those dates. So be on the lookout for that. And if you've not yet earned your H&D credit, or you know folks who haven't, you can still earn in that early February deadline, because you will start reporting your CLE credits on January 2nd, when our office opens back up. Is that a Saturday or Sunday? Susan Adams is going to have my head if I just gave you a Sunday. But in any event,
January 2nd, I believe, is a Saturday.
Okay, so the next Monday, so let's say the 4th, is when you can start reporting online, and our portal will be open. And please read it carefully, because if you have not already reported for 2018 and 2019, you're going to have a little extra work to do. If you're just reporting for 2020, it'll be very straightforward. But any questions, please ask our CLE and registration coordinator, Susan Adams, or certainly you can always call me. If you are a guardian ad litem, you have the same reporting time frame, and so you can earn right through now until the end of the month, and then you'll start reporting as well. Speaking of lateral transfers, there's a great Ethics Commission opinion for those of you who perhaps you're a firm, a managing partner at a firm, and you have departing lawyers, or you are the departing lawyer. The Ethics Commission issued an opinion a couple of years ago now, and it's number 219, chock full of great information for y'all as you contemplate changes in your firm or in your own lives. So those are some highlights, I think, of what we are seeing right now. Thad, to answer your question, a lot of inquiries about that issue, as well as concerns about how lawyers are treating each other, and we continue to work on that. And actually, Dr. Perry, I think, will get into that in probably her next session, some of these interrelational issues that when we are trying to have interactions with one another, we're doing so in a way that puts the, really puts the, what's the word I'm looking for? Puts the focus on an effective and a successful communication, rather than churning up more discontent amongst ourselves. So those are all some good things that are on the horizon for you and for us. And in terms of complaints, that I think it's the same as it kind of always is. Some of it is fees, though. So you've heard me talk about your fee agreements. While you have hopefully some quiet time this month and into early January, Get your house in order. Take a look at those fee agreements. I'm a big fan also of third-party guarantor agreements. We've talked about that a little bit. So if you have people that are paying for your clients, make sure to have a separate agreement for them. But overall, take a look at some of your documents, look at your passwords and how your office is running, update all of those things, and get your house in order, check in with your proxy, and really take care of the business side of your practice as well as you and your client side. Thanks.
Thank you, Aria. I appreciate that. And I did want to ask, do you know anything about the planned schedule or how the courts, I know this is sort of a court thing to plan on ushering in the new people that pass the bar exam?
Right, that's the one thing I left off. The witness was non-responsive to the question. So they are already doing admission ceremonies, and they're doing them generally by Zoom. So there's been several. In fact, I think there were about 20 lawyers who got admitted on Friday, and there was one in person, and I believe that was in Lincoln County with Justice Young. So what I'm seeing in our office, our registration coordinator, or our registration assistant, Lisa Henschel, has been processing those. And my observation is that they're occurring generally by Zoom. She's working with the courts to do that.
Great. And thank you very much, Ari. I appreciate you coming on board and giving us the info.
I have one more thing. Don't forget about the Maine law mentorships. Did y'all talk about that already?
Not in any type of depth. We did mention it on our last bar talk that.
Okay, great.
And I was going to bring it up, but thank you. That's perfect, Aria.
Yeah, we will do that. And I know you've got other things going on too, Aria. You're welcome to stay on board with us. And we do understand though if you have to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mike Levy waved. But there's Jim. Okay, Jim, I appreciate you coming on board too. And you had given our Board of Governors kind of a brief overview of what's happening on the legislative side, and we thought it would really be worthwhile sharing with our group. And thanks for coming on board.
Great. Thanks, Thad, and great to see you all today. And I can also report that because of COVID, all the conferences and events that I typically would go to in a year and accumulate about 30 CLEs by the time October rolled around. That was not the case this year. So many thanks to the Board of Bar Overseers and their staff for helping to smoothly make sure that I met all the criteria and very responsive. So thank you.
Always for you, Jim.
You're welcome. So I wanted to talk a little bit, as Thad said, about what's happening with the Maine legislature. And I know it's been probably about a month since I spoke last to Bar Talk. But the new legislature has now been sworn in. So at the beginning of this month, all 186 members took the oath of office. They've been sworn in. They've adopted some new rules. And committee assignments just came out last week. So first, a little bit about the new rules. And obviously with COVID-19, we've all been functioning on a remote level, but the legislative rules really didn't account for that. And the only way the legislature can adopt rules is when the legislature is in session, and they hadn't been in session since March 17th. So over the summer, if anyone happened to participate in a legislative hearing, it was a little bit clunky, where members had to physically be in the building. They would come together, then they would go to different rooms, then to vote, they'd have to come back into the same room. Now the legislature has adopted rules allowing for virtual participation and virtual voting. Exactly how a committee hearing is going to go next year is still a bit of a work in progress, although I have heard some leaders saying that it will be something like a Portland City Council meeting, and South Portland City Council has a similar approach. Basically what that means is the people who are on video are the committee members, And then members of the public who testify are brought in on an audio level only. Now, whether that's in fact how things will turn out when the new year gets going remains to be seen. There's obviously a lot of interest, concern about making sure that there's full public access to committee meetings, but at least that legislative rule change was important. The other major rule change that occurred has to do with how bills are referred to committee. Early in the session, before a lot of bills have been printed or processed, there's relatively little for the legislature to come into session as a whole, other than to refer bills to committee. And that's a process that requires the House and the Senate in concurrence to send a bill, whether it's to Judiciary, Appropriations, or any other committee. This year, the rules have been changed to allow the clerk of the House and the secretary of the Senate, who typically make a suggested committee reference, to now, in fact, refer bills to committee. So that means that the legislature will not need to have to come into session as frequently early in the year, which means that their need to go to the Augusta Civic Center, which is their home away from home for the foreseeable future, will be less. Now, there's also a large number of nominations that have been made where the committees were not able to vote on them, and essentially they died. And so now the governor has got to renominate dozens and dozens of people, and there will be committee confirmation hearings related to that. The Senate will need to go into session periodically once those nomination and confirmation committee hearings have occurred. So expect the Senate to go into session a little bit more frequently. All of the officers of the, or rather leaders of the legislature have now been appointed by their relative caucuses, and likewise the presiding officers have been voted on. So on the Senate side, I'll start there. Somewhat similar leadership overall, but Troy Jackson, senator from Aroostook County, returns as the Senate president. Senator Nathan Libby from Lewiston, returns as the Senate Majority Leader, and Senator Eloise Vitelli from Sagadahoc returns as the Assistant Majority Leader. And then on the Republican side, Jeff Timberlake, Senator from Androscoggin, moves up from being whip to the Republican Minority Leader, and Matt Pouliot from Augusta is the new whip in the Senate. On the House side, more changes. Ryan Fecto from Biddeford moves from being the Assistant Majority Leader to the Speaker, the youngest Speaker in the House of Representatives nationally. Then also we look to Representative Michelle Dunphy from Old Town to be the Majority Leader, and Representative Rachel Talbot Ross from Portland as the Assistant Majority Leader. And then on the Republican side, Representative Kathleen Dillingham from Oxford returns as the Minority Leader, and Joel Stetkis, who's new to the leadership, comes on board as the Assistant Minority Leader. So that rounds out the 10 members of Legislative Council. In addition, there were votes on the constitutional officers. So somewhat unusually, the race for Secretary of State was more public. There was actually a public debate among 6 candidates who ran for office. And ultimately, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, the final vote was taken, and State Senator Shenna Bellows from Kennebec was elected to be the Secretary of State. That creates a vacancy in her seat, and that's anticipated to be filled through a special election sometime probably later in January. Otherwise, Henry Beck returns as the state treasurer, and Aaron Fry returns as the Attorney General. And then the final is the state auditor, which is not a constitutional officer, but As a matter of statute, it's also voted on by the legislature. And Matt Dunlap, former Secretary of State, was elected as the state auditor. That's for a 4-year term. And one of the statutory conditions is for him to maintain, I believe, a CPA or something similar to that within 9 months. So he'll have to take some additional courses, et cetera, to make sure that that qualification is met. So that rounds out the constitutional officers. And then otherwise, committee members have been set. So normally that's something that is selected after Christmas and before New Year's, and very intentionally so. You can imagine with 186 members, people have very specific committees that they want to be serving on, and not everyone gets their first choice. So by appointing people after Christmas during the holidays, it's a little harder for the complaints to come in, and that's just been the usual practice. With COVID-19, leadership accelerated that process by about 2 weeks. And so on Friday, new committee assignments were made. I'll just say notably, the Appropriations Committee, which is probably the most important committee in the legislature, has 2 returning members. Kathy Breen from Falmouth will be the chair of that committee, and Representative Teresa Peirce, also from Falmouth, moves up to be chair of that committee. Otherwise, there's the Judiciary Committee, which obviously has importance for this group. Some new chairs. Senator Ann Carney from Cumberland County and Cape Elizabeth is new to the committee as Senate chair, and Representative Tom Hartnett from Gardner moves into the slot as chair. So that's some of the highlights of what's happening in the legislature. And I see that there's a question, and the question is, when are we going to get new district court judges? Well, the answer to that is I don't have clear information on that. Now that the legislature is in session, now that the Judiciary Committee is able to meet again, expect all number of nominations to occur within the next month or so. There's a lot of positions that need to be filled, including there's a vacancy on the Maine Commission on Indigent Legal Services. That's a 9-member body. There are only 8 members currently in place. The 9th slot actually is one that's supposed to be selected from a list provided by the Maine State Bar Association. So we've had a number of conversations trying to work on hopefully getting that last seat filled so that that important commission can be fully rounded out. But happy to answer other questions people may have.
And I just want to put you on the spot a little bit, Jim, too. If there are any questions that come in the meantime, that'll be fine. We've got probably 2 or 3 minutes more. So one of the things I want to comment on is on NPR this morning, I heard that the state's use of the Augusta Civic Center is costing us $4,000 a day, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I can see how they're probably trying to move to other alternatives to use as little of it as they can. And it makes more sense now that you've discussed how they're going to do that. That's kind of neat. When do these constitutional positions, like you've mentioned, the Secretary of State change and the auditor change, for instance, when do they get sworn into those positions? When do they start?
As far as I know, they have already been sworn in.
Okay. And do they start like on January 1st then?
I imagine that they are already moving ahead on their assignments, but just as the legislature. But that's something I'd want to confirm, to be honest.
Right. And I hear you. I put you on the spot. And then like, for instance, I know there are a number of probate court judges that were elected. My understanding is they get sworn in sometime this month, but they take their office on January 1st, which I think is kind of interesting. And one other thing, we had spoken before about what's going on in Portland. I know you're connected there as a part of the Chamber of Commerce. if you could just take just 30 seconds to explain what the issue is related to the stepped up minimum wage in Portland, and what people are doing in Portland about it.
Sure, thank you, Thad. And in Portland, over the fall, there were 6 ballot question initiatives that were municipal in nature, one of which was a minimum wage question. It had 2 components. One part was to move to a $15 an hour minimum wage going forward. The second part, which was less discussed publicly, was what some people refer to as a hazard wage or disaster wage. But the idea was that during a time of declared states of emergency, such as we're in right now, that the wage would be 1.5 times the minimum wage. So today, the state minimum wage is $12 an hour. That would mean that the minimum wage would be $18 an hour. There is now a question as to when that wage took effect. Advocates for the question that passed say it went into effect on December 6th, which was 30 days after the election results were certified. And then there are others, including the city of Portland, who say, no, it starts on January 1, 2022, based upon a plain reading of the language of the ordinance. In the last several weeks, that we've heard a lot from members of the business community concerned about whether or not they can afford to pay that wage, whether or not that wage was appropriately adopted by the voters, when does it go into effect? And so a lawsuit was filed against the city of Portland. Some employees have participated as interveners. That case is moving forward, but it raises questions about what is the overall authority of municipalities to adopt initiatives of this nature, and then more specifically, when does, if this is legal, when does it go into effect? The other thing I would just mention quickly, since we're talking about the legislature and the Portland Chamber, on Thursday morning at 8 a.m., I'll be moderating a discussion with House Speaker Ryan Fecteau and Republican leader in the House, Kathleen Dillingham, through the Portland Community Chamber, through Eggs and Issues. So folks are welcome to join that as well.
Thank you very much, Jim. And I thought I remember as part of our conversation in the past that you had indicated there are a fair amount of businesses in Portland that are paying the stepped up wage, just that can afford it, just to avoid what potentially could be liability in the future.
Yeah, and certainly as a chamber, the chamber has advised all employers to talk with their counsel. I have a number of colleagues in our labor and employment group who are advising their own clients. But by and large, I think what lawyers are saying to businesses, it's uncertain. The risk is if you don't pay, then you can be liable under state law for 3 times damages for the difference between what you should have paid and what you did pay. So there are some employers who are moving ahead and not paying, taking a risk, and then there are other employers who are paying to reduce the risk of having to be found liable for treble damages.
And Jim, thank you very much for joining us. Angela, there haven't been any additional questions, right? Nope. Okay. We only have like 1 minute left to finish up kind of the rest of the stuff we have. Jim, thank you so much for that valuable information. And again, you are, I didn't say it at the beginning, our legislative liaison, working on behalf of the MSBA, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
And Angela, can you give us some business side updates? I know you've put a few of them on.
Yes, thank you. So as Aria mentioned earlier, and I didn't put it on the slide today, but we have sent out, and I believe the overseers have or will be sending out information about the rural practice program that the law school does, that we do as co-sponsors of that. And right now they are requesting mentors. So people who want to volunteer, put their name in the hat to be mentors for students for the summer of 2021. And we sent that email out last week. I believe you can also go to our website and find that information too. So if you have an interest, please make sure you get your application in, which I believe is due by December 23rd. As you know, CLE credits are due by the end of the year. We have several programs going on from now till the end of 2020. Please visit our website to get your credits. And don't forget, the Winter Bar Conference is happening in January, the end of the month. And we will have Bar Talk next Monday, the 21st, but we will not have it on the 28th. So December 21st, next Monday, will be our last Bar Talk of 2020.
And thank you, Angela. The other part of that is too, I suspect, I was really thinking it was going to be ready for this Monday, but I suspect we're going to have 3 new PMO changes that we're going to want to be clued in on come next Monday. Angela, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had more, but I do see Kelly McDonald is online with us, our president-elect for the Maine State Bar Association beginning January 1st. We'll be hosting, I believe, the January 4th Bar Talk. But I wanted to ask, Kelly, was there something that you wanted to share about the diversity committee in like 15 seconds, or are you going to want to leave that till next time?
I tell you what, hi, everybody. I think that's a large topic. We've been doing some good stuff at the Bar Association on this issue. And let's talk about that in greater depth another time. Let me make 2 pitches. First of all, a pitch for the Winter Bar Conference. We are putting together the topics now. We're going to have a bunch of really interesting topics. Please spread the word and encourage folks to come. It's going to be kind of an a la carte model, so you can pick and choose how you like it with your schedule. And it should be a really useful experience. Second, with respect to Bar Talk, if anybody has ideas or for topics that they would like to see covered in Bar Talk in 2021, please let me know. Thanks.
Kelly, thank you very much for joining us. If there's nothing more, I want to say thank you for everyone for working through this COVID situation we've had for the last 9 months, and for being patient on our transition to a new president. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.